Mr. Ternoni, would you care to explain this hearing and why, what, and all those things?
Sure, absolutely. According to Illinois statute, if you're a taxing district and if you think that the total increase in dollars you could collect in property taxes is greater than 5%, then you must hold a public hearing. The budget that's before the board tonight does not have an increase greater than 5%. It's actually estimated to be maybe 3.5%. The hearing is done anyway just for reasons of transparency. So the way that tax cap law works is that the total dollars of the county government, this is about the county only, it's not about all the other taxing bodies, the total dollars for the county government can grow by the rate of inflation, which is 2.1%, plus the estimated value of new property, which is about 1.4%. So the published budget could see the total dollars for the county only going up 3.5%. Just to confuse the picture even more, the county had bonds for an animal services building. The last year of those payments is the current year. So and that payment ends, so the tax actually decreases by that amount. So in reality, the increase is more like 1%. But I've used 3.5 because it's more apples to apples of the future costs. So this is informational for the public, and it's voluntary on our part to even have the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Ternoni. Is there any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'm going to be a little redundant here, but just follow procedure. I'd ask, is there any public comment regarding the Truth in Taxation hearing? Once again, is there any public comment regarding the Truth in Taxation hearing? Yes, please come forward. Grab the microphones. I'll need your name and address, please, for the record. You have to really...
My name is Melinda Rhodes, and I live at 15423 Capron Road. The question is about the settling of the bonds. So that amount is getting added. Is that what you're saying? And that will be retired then? How much is that amount?
The animal services bonds that were approved by the voters is $266,000 a year. The year that we're in is the last year that they levy for those bonds, so it comes off the tax roll.
It's over then?
It's over, yes, yes.
Thank you.
One last time, is there any public comment regarding the Truth in Taxation hearing? Seeing none, I will close the Truth in Taxation hearing. Thank you very much for your patience. Quickly, just on a side, Ms. Miller, could you check that microphone to make sure it seems to be working?
Check, check, check.
Okay,
Sounds
thank
good.
you very much. Next up, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll rise for that. And after we rise, we'll go ahead and be seated, and we'll hear an invocation from Pastor Randy Wakich.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Wakich, please come up.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you to the board members for inviting us from Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in Belvedere, right down the street on East Hurlbutt. Back in 1842, Bishop Philander Chase from Chicago rode out to Squaw Prairie by horseback and confirmed and baptized people here in the Episcopal faith, and that was the beginning of our church here in Belvedere. And so this last summer, we celebrated 175 years in Belvedere. So we're happy to be here. There's 10 of us here from Holy Trinity. They're all sitting back here. We might not stay that long as we do at church. But we've been there on East Hurlbut in Main Street for a long, long time. We provide free winter coats and hats and gloves for those who need them from November through March. And just the last 2 weeks, we've had 26 people come to Holy Trinity for a free coat. So we do accept donations of coats. So if you have any coats that are in good shape and clean, please feel free, and you're ready to get rid of them, please feel free to bring them over. We'll pass them along to those who need them. We also participate in Meals on Wheels, Habitat for Humanity. We also provide prayer services at two local nursing homes regularly. And just this year, one of our members, a couple of our people, started making walker bags for some of the people that live at the nursing homes so they can carry their loot on their walkers and their wheelchairs. So we're very involved in serving in Christ's name in Belvedere and in Rockford also. So we also serve this community by being here, and we serve this community by praying daily as a people of faith using the Book of Common Prayer. And so we were happy when Carl called to invite us. I told the congregation after you called me, I said, I don't want to go over there by myself. So I'm grateful for the support and the presence of the people here tonight. This is how we pray from the Book of Common Prayer, and I'll just conclude with this. It's a prayer that is in the Book of Common Prayer. It's the last prayer that we pray at night and during Compline prayer, and this is how it goes. We also regularly pray for you as leaders of this county, as well as other leaders of the city of Belvedere and also the state and the country and the world. So this is a prayer we pray at night. Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. Shield the joyous. And all for your love's sake. Amen.
Amen.
Pastor Wackets, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for all that you and your congregation do for this community. And on a side note here, for your coat donations, if there's anybody that is interested in donating coats, should they call the church office? Should they just show up between certain times? Or
Tuesday morning is the best time, or Saturday morning.
Tuesday and Saturday mornings, the best times to donate coats. So thank you very much for all you do. We appreciate it. Roll call, please.
Carl Johnson,
Here.
Sherry Branson,
Here.
Jeff Carlisle,
Here.
Denny Ellingson,
Here.
Sherry Gieske,
Here.
Carl Larson,
Here.
Ray Larson,
Here.
Jessica Milner,
Here.
Marshall Newhouse,
Here.
Bernard O'Malley,
Here.
Brad Stark,
Here.
Kathy Ward.
Here.
Thank you very much. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Brad Stark, seconded by Mr. O'Malley. Is there any additions, subtractions? Ms. Ward?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to remove from the standing committee, the City-County Coordinating Committee, the current motion that is listed under 15.1, which says contingent upon a like vote of the Belvedere City Council motion to approve the Boone County Sensitive Aquifer Recharge Areas, SARA, map draft 1, and the updated Boone County Comprehensive Plan that was approved 7-0. It does not mean that we're not concerned about recharge areas, but it is necessary that we remove this particular motion at this time, and our state's attorney can assist.
Okay, I
as
have
to
a
why.
motion by Ms. Ward. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Branson. Madam State's Attorney?
Yes. In reviewing the motion, it is to either amend or adopt part of a comprehensive plan, and due to that, it has to go through a special procedure. It has to be filed in a written application and presented to the Regional Planning Commission so that there can be a public hearing with testimony, and that was not done prior to tonight. The motion had come through one of the county committees, and everyone that I've spoken to is very, very much supportive of the idea of protecting our groundwater. And like Mrs. Ward said, it's not that we're not going to consider this in the future. It just wasn't properly before the board this evening.
Any questions from the board on that? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment carries. Any other amendments from anyone else to the motion or to the agenda? I do have one. I would like to move 11.4 under finance and make it 11.15. So I would need a motion for that.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gieske. Any discussion on that? All in favor, Mr. Newhouse?
Just a change in position, that's all we're doing?
Correct, just a change in position. To make everything kind of flow a little better.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, I need an approval. I would accept a motion to approve the October 18th and October 30th county board minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Seconded by Mr. Carlisle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, appointments. We have none. Next up, I'd like to introduce Mr. Donald Cariff. He's the Assistant Director of Illinois Department of Public Health, and I'm going to bet that he may ask our own Health Department Director to join him, possibly at the podium, or he may just come up by himself, whatever he so desires. There you go.
Thank you, Chairman. I know you have a full agenda, so I'm not going to take much of your time tonight, but I want to thank you for allowing me to come to your, come to your county. I've been here all day. You know, it's interesting. I heard about a health department up in northern Illinois that is kind of special, that they have looked at public health, not the traditional way we look at it for the last 20 years, but new approaches for protecting the public's health. And I kind of want to come up and view it myself and see if this is reality. And, today I've been in your county at food inspections. I've been walking through septic tank reviews. Go through yours, doctors. I saw providing immunizations to children to give them a chance at life. You know, I've been looking at this county, and you know, I've seen public health at work. And you know, often we think of public health is closing down the restaurant, immunizations. But in this county, public health is so much more. This is giving people life. And I'm proud. I'm proud with the state health department that we look at our funding being effectively used. We're seeing good public health. Chairman, you have good public health here. And I stuck around. Got to drive back to the bureaucratic place called Springfield, Illinois tonight. But I want to be here to tell you that it is important what you're doing. And I thank you very much for your support of Amanda and her team. Great team. great team, everyone. Just they represent your county well. I just want to tell you that. Thank you very much, sir. You got a great health department.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee or the board at all? No, I don't see any. Have a safe drive back to Springfield, and thank you very much for coming and talking to us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a point. We've got a high-ranking individual from the Springfield area up, and the best we can do is show him Bernie's septic tank.
That's probably a good point. Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Next up is an individual that I know personally. He's here to talk to us about something I think is very important, and I hope everybody will listen to what he has to say and what he does. And I think we all know people in our lives that inspire us a little, that we're proud to say we know. We see them do things and do things for others, and it makes you feel good that you know them and you can appreciate what they do. I sometimes think Jerry takes it a little to an extreme in abusing himself, and I'm sure he'll probably talk a little bit about what I mean by that. But I'd like to introduce Jerry Olson, and he is going to talk to us about Dark Horse Lodge and what it is. Jerry?
All right, thanks, Carl. First of all, Council, thanks for having me, and citizens of Boone County. I'm here to talk to you about a project that I'm very passionate about. It has to deal with combat veterans. First of all, I'm not a combat veteran. I served 5 years in the Marine Corps. I've just been blessed to be in peacetime. However, a young man in my community in Byron died in combat 7 years ago. So I'm just giving you a little background of this story and why Carl brought me here tonight. The family since has relocated to Tennessee, and during that process, of the grieving process, if you will, they realized these young men that come back from battle, of course, are changed. I've seen some of them, I've known some of them, and I see that change, both on professional levels and personal levels. But they want to give them a peaceful place to stay and heal themselves amongst themselves. So when they go to different memorials, the mom would see these young men she knew start sharing these stories with each other of combat. Not that they're fun to listen to, they're very real, they're very nasty, dirty stories of what they've gone through. But in the process, they're healing each other. So this group that I'm with is known as Dark Horse Lodge. It's named after this young man's unit that lost 25 people in 4 short months. So most of us can relate to somebody in the military, either past or present. And their way of healing each other, whether they know it or not, is talking to each other. So that's where I come into play. The mom had an idea, why can we not recreate a peaceful place for this to happen? Why can we not have a place like this where they can unwind with people of like soul? So it doesn't matter if it's a World War II veteran, the Vietnam veteran, the Afghanistan veteran, doesn't matter. It's a place for combat veterans, run by combat veterans. Certainly not me. I'll be the guy in the back washing the sheets, folding laundry, whatever it may be. So how does that make me fit in with all of this? I'm very passionate about going out raising funds for it, but I'm passionate in the fact that I put myself to the test to let everybody, to kind of inspire people, if you will. So my big thing that I do every year is called Trek for Troops. It runs Veterans Day weekend, so for the last 3 years we've been doing it. The first year I walked 100 miles carrying an 80-pound weight vest. Last year I tried to go 400 miles in 4 days on foot. I made 240 of it. My team, we crushed 400 miles. And just this past Saturday, I finished up walking 100 miles carrying a 100-pound sandbag. So this certainly isn't about my accolades for what I do to get people to raise awareness. It's more so to show the weight of the world that we place on our combat veterans, not only when they deploy, but as they're back home, and then ask them to come home and do what? Put a smile on their face, right? So I want to be able to do that for these combat veterans. I want to let them know they're valuable. I want to let them know that they're loved on, they're cared for, and that we're not just throwing them to the wolf pack when they come back home. So that's why I'm here. Carl's been involved with me for a couple years now, helping out. So this is just another platform he's invited me to come to and just let you know that I'm out here trying to help out. I'll stick around. I have more information. I don't want to take up too much of your meeting time on that. But this is what I do, and basically all we're doing is trying to give a peaceful place for these combat veterans to come stay for a week on us. They just have to get to and from, and we're just going to treat them the way they want to be treated amongst each other. So, thank you.
Jerry, can you talk a little bit about what those combat vets can do while they're at the Dark Horse Lodge when they're there?
So some of the activities we're going to have, because we're going to be right at the tip of the Kentucky Lake, so we're going to take them fishing. There's going to be some hiking. We have equestrian therapy that's in the works, and we also have professional therapy that will be there. We certainly don't want to name it a PTSD resort. I mean, that's not cool, right? So we don't want to do that. We just want these guys to heal, these young women to heal. It's important that they know that we believe in what they do so we can enjoy nights like tonight. So it's just my way of giving back. I just like to shine a little bit of my crazy and what I do every Veterans Day weekend to give back to them. Any other questions?
Any questions from the board? Paul?
You don't have to walk 100 miles with a 100-pound sandbag, I promise. It's a lot easier than that.
I do have one more thing. I was able to pry a check from my wife this evening, or beg and plead. I had to get a forward on my allowance, but I'm going to say that for anybody that is interested in donating to Dark Horse Lodge that's here this evening, you'll see there's a little dump truck up there on a thing, and that actually was my dump truck when I was a kid that I played with. So for anybody that wants to donate, you can put that donation in that dump truck, and I'll make sure that Jerry gets it. But for every dollar we raise tonight, I'll match 50 cents on the dollar up to $300 of my own money towards that. So if you feel inclined, you want to donate, please put it in there.
I say we take Carl's lunch money.
That's right. It's my diet plan. So.
Good for you.
All right. So, Jerry, thank you, and keep it up. Next up, public comment. I know we have at least one. Is there any other? I have one thing for public comment here. Is there anybody else that is interested? If you are, please fill out a form and bring it up here. I have Melinda Rhodes. Come and join us again, please.
Okay, so I'm going to have to read my statement because I'm not going to be smooth like Jerry. I came again tonight because I wanted to make sure. I came again tonight because I wanted to make sure that all the board members knew the other opinion in the neighborhood. Okay, so my name is Melinda Rhodes, and I came to talk about the David Figueroa case 26-2017, 14309 KB Road. I've lived myself at 15423 Capron Road, Capron, for 19 years. I hold a home occupation permit from your department for my bake shop for the past 12 or so years. My home is a little over a mile from the home property in question, and he will have to drive past my house multiple times per day. I knew the previous owners well. I'm familiar with that property. I know the Figueroa family as clients, as I do many of the other community members, and I see familiar faces here tonight. We are also familiar with the large trucks using Capron and Wanky Road. Many families in this area run their own trucks for harvest and other commodities. I know we purchased gravel from a neighbor this year to dress up our driveway, and he brought it on his way home. The families here that use our roads are respectful to the fact that we are living here also. I would say pollution, noise, and otherwise is kept to a minimum. During harvest time, as you know, the need to work extended hours is expected. We know that we will be seeing more trucks hauling grain and harvesting fields a lot of time at night. The field across the street from my home was harvested late at night about 5 weeks ago. Amber waves of grain, we expect it. I have heard that there has been some opposition to David Figueroa working his business from KB location. This is a good family, and I feel assured that he will respect us as we should him. We recommend to grant his permit with a special consideration to harvest time so he can enjoy the same privileges that others are enjoying Segregating him from the rules that the others generally abide by constitutes this situation a class of one doctrine, and I don't think it's just or right. I understand the concern of possible changes to the neighborhood, but also know that nothing will be different than normal. We were happy when we found out this family was going to be our neighbor, happy for them and happy for us. And I just want to clarify what the class of one doctrine is for anyone that doesn't understand that statement. An individual can bring an equal protection claim against a state actor for irrational and wholly arbitrary treatment. The person is a class of one when he or she alleges that the government is subjecting only them to differing and unique treatment compared to others similarly situated. I'll cite Enquist versus Oregon Department of Agriculture 07-474. The Oregon Department of Ag and the Ninth Circuit Court assert that the class of one cases are appropriate when government is acting as regulator but not employer. I want to add that a lot of families run trucks off of their property, and that's going to affect many, many people. And it's not every family in the neighborhood disagrees. It's wrong to tell him no and let others do it. And I have no problem with him driving past my house. We have piles of families that drive trucks past our home. We're right on the corner hub there, and during harvest it goes on at night, and you know, they're respectful and they're just trying to feed their families. That's the bottom line. So that's what I have to say. I thank you for your time and listening. There weren't as many faces here last time because I was here one other time. And I thought I'd better stop back because there were a lot of empty seats.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, I believe this is Cornelius O'Malley. Oh. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That's okay. Did you have something you wanted to talk about? No. Okay. Well, if you think there will be later, now would be the time to do it, because there won't be time later. Well, this is the public comment time. So if you want to make public comment, now would be to do it. Otherwise, during the rest of the meeting, there won't be an opportunity for you to make comment. Okay. Next up, Council on Aging.
We actually meet next week.
Thank you, Mr. Ellingson.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I
Ms.
might.
Ward.
I would like to thank all of the people that came to our gala about 10 days ago. We set a lot of records. We had about 350 businesses who made volunteer contributions of a variety of kinds. They bought tables, they bought desserts, they bought tickets. We had at least 100 other volunteers that made desserts, and one of our desserts actually sold, as many of you know, for $900. So we are very proud of how hard the people that work at the Boone County Council on Aging, and we want to thank all of you. Half of you board members were there, and at least half of the department heads were there, made speeches or bought desserts or whatever, but thank you from all of us that work hard at the Council of Aging. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Ms. Ward. Growth Dimensions. I know Ms. Fettis is not here. Ms. Gieske, did you have anything you wanted to?
I do not, but I think there was a report on our desks.
Yes, there was. There was. Okay. Next up, CASA. Charlotte, there you are.
For those that don't know, CASA represents abused and neglected children in the court system. We train volunteer advocates to represent them. We currently have 22 advocates, 20 have cases. We are serving 39 kids, which is a little bit down from past months, which is a great thing. We've had a couple of adoptions and a couple of children returned home in the past couple of weeks, so that's been exciting news. We have unfortunately received a couple of new cases as well, so we are up to 17 new cases for the year and 74 total for the year. Other than that, upcoming events, we are doing Hometown Christmas, sponsoring a Christmas tree and a family for that, and we'll be handing out candy canes in the PNC Bank foyer during Hometown Christmas after the parade. That's it.
Any questions for CASA? Thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Next up, Board of Health. Ms. Smell. Congratulations, by the way, on your recognition from the state. Great job.
Thank you. So I didn't bring trivia tonight. Don't worry. We won't do that every month.
But I studied.
Great. Good evening, County Board. Good evening, members of the public. I'm Amanda Mail. I'm the Public Health Administrator at the Boone County Health Department. And it was a real privilege and pleasure to have the Assistant Director of the Illinois Department of Public Health here all day long to participate in special Board of Health meeting, well and septic inspections, restaurant inspections, immunizations, stakeholder meetings, a comprehensive plan update, and a variety of other exciting activities throughout the day. I hope we did Boone County proud. That was our goal, was to represent the entire county and the community in welcoming Springfield to our community here. So that was a privilege and a pleasure. I did want to recognize several staff members that I have here tonight because they are the boots on the ground. They're the folks that are making local public health work. So I have two staff members that are here this evening. If you would just stand so that the board is aware of who you are. Thank you for all that you're doing for our department. I have several Board of Health members who are here this evening as well, and the Board of Health has been very supportive of a lot of the activities that we've been working on. We have a brand new mission and vision statement that was adopted by the Board of Health last month, and I want to share it with the County Board because I think it embodies exactly the reasons why Springfield took notice of a lot of what we're trying to do here in Boone County in terms of local public health. So the new mission of the Boone County Health Department is to serve our community by preventing the spread of disease, promoting optimal wellness, and protecting the public's health. And our vision will guide and inspire the community to enjoy a high quality of life by redefining the role of public health delivery, creating a culture of health, advancing health equity, building strong community engagement and collaboration, and attaining national public health accreditation. And in case the Boone County Board hadn't noticed, I really like my job, and I really like working here, and it's been a pleasure for me. I've been here for about a year now. And if it's okay, I think I'll stay on just a little bit longer. And I did want to pass around our program highlight, and then I will be finished. It's flu season, as many of you learned with the trivia questions from last month. So flu shots are available in our office during our normal business hours. We also have community flu clinics going on throughout the community over the past couple of months, and several of our community clinics are highlighted in our program highlight this month. Another issue that I want to bring to the board's attention is the flu surveillance and tracking work that we do in terms of disease prevention. So we work with our public school system and our local clinics and doctors' offices, and influenza-like illness and rapid testing for influenza cases are reported, and we track that during flu season. So our goal is to keep children in the schools safe and to prevent a influenza outbreak in the schools. We also monitor flu activity throughout the county. So we take a look at the data that we receive from the local clinics and hospitals. And this is one of the ways in which we protect and promote the health in Boone County. Are there any questions?
Questions for Amanda? Thank you very much. And I think we'll be glad to have you stay on at least one more year. Next up, RPC, Regional Planning Council. Ken, I believe you went to that, as I was unavailable at the last minute.
Yes, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is called R1, met last week, and they're morphing themselves into becoming a true regional planning council. And the first group, or first meeting of that official group will be December 14th, 12:30 in Rockford. So that will be the first meeting of what is to be a regional planning council.
Any questions? All right. Next up, our general consent items. I do want to, before we, well, you know what? I accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Gieske. I would like to point out the donations that we received. All of these were to Animal Services from Robert and Christine Bagelman, from Marjorie Carlson, from BCAS Auxiliary, Culver's event, and from Edward Fisher. We thank all of those for their donations towards Animal Services. Any questions on the consent agenda? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, standing committees. PZB.
Thank you. We start with a motion on 10-1, a motion to approve case 24-2017, Arms. The applicant and owner is requesting approval of the replat of lots 140 and 141 of Candlewick Lake, Unit 7, into Lot M, Unit 7, and the vacation of the utility easement and setbacks between the two lots. The subject property is located at 201 Winesap Street, Southwest Poplar Grove. PIN number of 03-27-104-014. It had staff approval, and PZB went through 5-0.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Mr. Stark. Any discussion from the county board? Staff, anything to add? Roll call, please.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. Next up, Mr. Ellingson. Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Newhouse, did you have some?
Point of order. I appreciate the roll call, but is that required under this since we're not spending money?
I think usually.
We typically do. You can have a roll call vote on any vote that someone requested, but it's not pursuant to the Boone County Code.
Okay. 10.2, motion to approve case 25-2017, Spindler. The applicant and owner is requesting approval of the replat of lots 301 and 302 of Candlewick Lake, Unit 4, into Lot HH, Unit 4, and the vacation of the utilities easement and setbacks between the two lots. The subject property is located at 717 Marquette Drive, Southwest Poplar Grove. The PIN 03-28-427-011. Staff approval, PZB passed 5-0.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Any discussion from the board? Staff? Mr. Newhouse?
Just one comment. We've been doing these replats out of Candlewick for probably decades is the safe time frame to say. And it is something that simplifies things for the homeowners. They have the ability to make this purchase, and there's nothing terribly out of the ordinary. And one is as complicated or as simple as the next, and it's really not a difficult issue at all. It's just something for the homeowners. So not that no one ever has any questions, but we kind of got used to it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Nothing further? Roll call, please.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
10.3 is a motion to approve ordinance 17-26, case 26-2017, Figueroa. The applicant and owner, David Figueroa, 14309 KB Road, Capron, is requesting a special use permit to allow a semi-cab and trailer to be parked in the A1 Agricultural Preservation Area District, which is part of Boone County Zoning Ordinance 3.16, Table of Permitted Uses, on 5.7 acres at 14309 KB Road, Capron, Illinois, and unincorporated Boone County, or Boone Township, Boone County, Illinois. PIN 04-22-200-011. It went through the planning committee, staff approval, ZBA 4-0, and PZB 5-0.
Motion by Mr. Ellingson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Branson. Any discussion? Mr. Ellingson. I'm sorry, Mr. Newhouse. There you go. Now it's all, forget it.
Hillary, this is something that's allowed in the A1 district, regardless of the density of housing around this proposal. I know in this particular area, there are 5-acre, call them farmettes or lots stacked one right after another. I've had the ability to vote on these, and I've approved them when it's been a single residence out in the middle of nowhere. A guy wants his truck, great. Is there any additional criteria that could or should be used when dealing with 5-acre lots close together, or should it be treated the same?
Since the zoning is essentially the same, it's all A1, people decide to use some of those smaller lots for residential purposes. Something to take into account, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the zoning does allow it. And surrounding areas also utilize trucks and trailers. We've had 1 or 2 opposition, but not necessarily a whole lot. So I still feel like this is an acceptable use, considering that there's a couple of houses on KB Road that are a little bit closer than other areas in the county.
The real Mr. Ellingson.
I would just make a comment on that question that probably 3 or 4 years ago, we did have one in the same type of a situation was not approved. And that did have to do with complaints and other homeowners being close enough to it that they thought it was a problem. But you are right, most of the time it has gone through, and that one was just kind of a unique one to me.
That one also was close to Village of Timberlane, and the use of those properties were developed as a subdivision, so it was kind of conflicting versus somebody buying a farmette and somebody deciding to live within a subdivision. So those things would counteract or be treated differently.
Anything further from the board? Staff, anything further?
Nope, not unless you guys have questions.
Would the applicant like to say anything? All right. Roll call, please.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Motion carries. Mr. Ellingson, anything else?
I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, the easiest one of the evening, Ms. Gieske.
You're such a silly guy. Item 11.1 is a motion to approve claims with the understanding that Carl Johnson abstains from voting on all claims presented by William Charles and Associates and HD Supply, and Denny Ellingson abstains from voting on all claims presented by Conserve FS.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Gieske, seconded by Mr. Newhouse. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We're going to go to the new 11.15, which was the former 11.4, which is a motion to approve a document dated November 7th, 2017, clarifying which non-union positions are subject to a 1% increase effective December 1st of 2016.
Motion by Ms. Gieske. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Ray Larson. Discussion.
Carl?
Mr. Ellingson.
Just a quick question as I look at it. She referenced that as a November 7th. document, and I was seeing December 14th on the one showing on the screen. Are we looking at the wrong item?
No, I neglected to finish my motion is what I did, Denny.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I got the right corrected date, and I forgot to finish my motion.
Okay.
May I go back? I got all jumbled up here because we're changing things. Hang on a minute, 11:24. It should say, motion to approve document dated November 7th of 2017, clarifying which non-union positions are subject to a 1% increase effective December 1st of 2016. And that needs to include the 9th version of GIS fund budget, the November 9th version of public defender budget. Whoops, am I on the wrong one again?
Hold on, Ms. Kieske, I'm sorry.
Which one do you want me to
I don't know. Mr. Terranoni?
May I clarify?
Yes, sir.
Your motion pertains to what is on the screen, which is November 14th, and it's pertaining to clarifying 1% increases that were voted in September 20th.
So I think I go back to my original and I turn it over to the chairman.
Yep. Yes, correct. Okay. So what this is doing is it's trying to clarify exactly what we wanted to do with our 1% increase. So we have some additional motions that would need to be made. At the current time, every non-union employee would be subjected to the additional 1%. There was some talk, some concern, not sure what we wanted to do. So here's how we have to do it. If, and we've talked about this at committee, there was some talk at the November 7th Finance Committee to include the county clerk's office, the GIS, and not include the public defender. There was talk at the October 30th meeting to include the administrator and other positions. But what it all boils down to is what we've got here is these couple of things here. If we do not want the county clerk's office to receive the 1%, I would accept a motion to remove the county clerk's office from receiving the 1% increase. If there is no motion to remove them from that, then they will get the increase as the original motion way back in September stated.
I would move to remove the county clerk's office from receiving 1% increase.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse, seconded by Mr. Ellingson. Discussion.
Can I have a point of order with the state's attorney?
Certainly.
Not to muddy the waters anymore, but Sherry, did you make a motion when we began this discussion under 11.15?
You are correct. These would be amendments to her motion. So this would be an amendment to her original motion.
So my wording should be, I move to amend the motion by removing the county clerk's office from receiving the 1% increase. Would that be correct?
If you so choose, yes.
That's what I did. Yes.
Okay. So amendment by Mr. Newhouse, seconded by Mr. Ellingson. Discussion on the amendment to remove the county clerk's office from the 1%. Ms. Kieske.
Since this is a little bit miscombobulated, I want to make sure that what the motion we're going to vote on now is to take the county clerk's office out of the salary increases that we approved.
Correct.
Out of the 1%.
Yes, so they will
So
no longer get the 1% increase that we talked about.
Yes, correct. And this 1%, just to clarify, this 1% is a 1% catch-up for this past year to make them equal with the union raises at 2%. Okay? Any other discussion? Mr. Newhouse.
Yes, I will kind of reiterate what my comments were at Finance, and that they, for the last few months, as we have been negotiating salaries with all of the departments, we have made great efforts to maintain those salaries at a percentage increase that most closely reflects a 2% increase. Some of these motions to amend that are highlighted at the bottom of or in the center of that screen up above those departments have had adjustments in salaries in the past 12 months that would, in my opinion, treat those individuals quite differently than what we are going to be treating the rest of the employees within the county, and offering a greater percent increase. And so that was the reason for my motion to amend.
Further discussion? I would just say that when we're talking about the clerk's office in this, I think they're more than deserving of this 1% reach back. I think it falls on us as a county board for not paying attention or properly understanding what we were voting for on the September motion. So I'm concerned that we will have told these individuals that they're going to get the 1% increase, and now we're telling them they're not going to get that 1% increase based on the fact that our motion simply stated all non-union employees. And when we start looking at the whole scheme of things, we're really not talking about that much money, and these certainly are not overpaid individuals by any means in that office. I would vote against this amendment, and I will be voting to allow them to get that. Ms. Miller?
In the discussion that came out of committee, it was outlined that the pay increases for this department and for the GIS department that came mid-year were adjustments either based on salary surveys that had been done to bring those wages commensurate to what the going rate for those people with those skills earn in this area, and then or changes in their duties. So I don't think that either of those conditions would exempt them from a cost of living increase. So I will also be voting against it.
Ms. Ward?
I have another one that I'd like to bring up. The bottom one says...
Well, we're just dealing with the first one right now.
Sorry.
One at a time.
Okay, that's
one
fine.
amendment at a time.
That's fine.
It's going to be a laborious process.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Gotcha.
The real Mr. Ellingson.
Thank you. I guess when I looked at it, and the reason I seconded that motion is, I think as we looked at it and we looked at how to distribute funds evenly and fairly, I think we looked at the fact that with things that have happened in those departments, that they have gotten the 2%, between the 1% up front and other things that have happened, that is the reason we're saying they do not get this 1%. They've already gotten the 2% on the year that we're saying that they all should get. We're saying they should not get more than the others on a percentage basis. And that's my feeling.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
You know what? Hold on a second. Just to make sure, just to clarify, if you vote no, the motion will fail and the clerk's office would be included in the 1%. If you vote yes, the motion will pass, just so we clarify. So if you could start again, please.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
Nay.
Jessica Milner,
No.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
No.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson,
No.
Sherry Branson,
No.
Jeff Carlisle,
No.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
No.
Motion fails. Next up, I would, if you would like to remove the GIS department from receiving the 1%, I would accept a motion to remove the GIS department from receiving the 1% increase. Mr. Newhouse?
Chairman, I would move to amend the motion to exempt the GIS department from receiving the 1% increase.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second? Mr. Ellingson? Second. Discussion. Mr. Ellingson?
Yeah, I'm really quite confused by the last vote, only in the fact that I wonder why we have spent months and months working on a budget and putting a budget together so we can sit here tonight and say, okay, now that we've got a budget, let's forget about it, whether we want to call it a cost of living or anything else. Now we're saying, you know, we don't need to worry about the numbers we did, and that really does confuse me with where I'm sitting.
Actually, these will not come out of the budget that we'll vote on in a little while. This would be coming out of the current year's budget. This 1% is to make up, all non-union employees got a 1% increase last year. This 1% is to make up the additional 1% that all union employees got a 2%. So this is a payback, so to speak, or a catch-up. So that's why we're talking about this 1% here.
Okay, and these offices and departments that we're looking at here are ones that already got that 1% either in a pay increase at another time of the year or something else?
They received the original 1% or some other sort of increase. The GIS department in particular received a, what I want to say, a rate of pay catch-up to make them, you know, somewhat close to a competitive rate with their peers, because they were grossly underpaid at the time of last year's budget, if that makes any sense to you.
It does. It just doesn't sound like what I heard at the last meeting that made me think people were already getting that 2% increase, and some had gotten it, you know, prior to the rest of the...
In the GIS department, I can't give you exact percentages as to what they were. I know that they were greater than a 2% increase, but that was a catch-up because, and I'm just going to use simple numbers because I'm a simple guy. You know, they were at $10,000 a year salary, but everyone else in their field was at $30,000. So we tried to bring them up to somewhat near, even though we couldn't do everything based on our budget constraints. So that's what GIS got as a department. So this would be a 1% that everyone else is getting. Ms. Gieske.
I think another point of clarification, the word retroactive might help, because this is retroactive to December 1st of 2016. And the salary increases that these two departments got that we've talked about so far were given, if I'm not wrong, were given in 2016.
Correct.
So it does not come out of this budget.
Ms. Milner.
Maybe it also would be helpful, too. I think Mr. Terranoni was able to estimate what the total, shoot close to what kind of number does this 1% represent? It's not an enormous number. For these departments that we're talking about, what this 1%, what this 1% represents financially as a whole.
Do you mean for the departments listed here?
Just the departments in question here.
If I just take a wild guess.
Ms. Gieske?
Isn't it on our desk? Possibly.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Isn't it on our desks? I think it's...
Yeah, it's really...
Am I reading this right? $1,249.46 for the clerk's office, and for GIS, let me see, 4, 5, 6, 7, about $800.
So there you go.
Or am I reading that wrong?
And then did you add public defender in that?
No, I haven't gotten that.
Just for those two.
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
$2,000.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Once again, a reminder, if you vote yes, the motion will pass, and the GIS department would be exempted from receiving the additional 1%. If you vote no, the motion will fail, and they will be included in receiving that 1%, retroactive. Roll call, please.
Ray Larson,
Nay.
Jessica Mueller,
No.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
No.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson,
No.
Sherry Branson,
No.
Jeff Carlisle,
No.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson.
No.
Motion fails. Next up, public defender's position. This is the public defender, not the public defender's office. If you would like to remove the public defender from receiving this additional 1%, I would accept a motion at this time. Mr. Newhouse.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the motion to exempt the public defender position from receiving the 1% increase.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Malley. Discussion. Mr. Newhouse.
We're in the first two items. I think it is going to impact our county's position when it comes to negotiating for salaries in the upcoming salary negotiation seasons, how we may treat departments differently. In this particular instance, I believe statute demands that we follow the language which states the public defender's salary is determined by a percentage of the state's attorney's salary. And this 1% would be something above and beyond that.
Ms. Gieske?
Marshall is correct, but the statute, I believe, says, or the ordinance says, at least a certain percentage. It doesn't have a maximum, it has a minimum, if I'm correct.
Further discussion from the board. I'll just make a statement that I'm going to vote in favor of this particular motion because we've always kept the public defender's salary in that exact percentage in conjunction with the state's attorney's salary, and they have not been subjected to the typical salary increases that we have year to year for various departments. So for that reason, I'd like to keep it consistent with what we've done in the past. Any further discussion? And just once again, to remind you that if you vote in favor, the motion will pass and the public defender would be exempted from the 1% increase. If you vote against and the motion fails, the public defender would be included. Roll call, please.
Jessica Mueller,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up would be to remove the supervisor of assessments position from receiving the 1% increase. If you would like to remove the supervisor of assessment from this, I would accept that motion right now. Mr. Newhouse?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the original motion to exempt the supervisor assessment from receiving the 1% increase.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Malley. Discussion. I will simply state that I will once again support this motion as the supervisor assessments. I'm not even sure is even full-time at this point. I don't think that starts until, or maybe it just started this month in November, but I think there are special circumstances there where he was brought in at a certain salary and under certain conditions and understands what those conditions are, so I will vote in support of this one also. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Mueller.
Yes.
Motion carries. The last one you see on the screen, we are not going to do because we don't really have any control over what the health department administrator's salary is, so it's a moot point. So we have,
Mr. Johnson,
yes, Ms. Ward?
are we going to talk about that whole health budget?
That would be
So-
under, most likely would be under our 11 point, 2.
Okay.
So next up, we have our original motion, 11.15, to approve the document dated November 15th, clarifying which non-union positions are subject to the 1% increase, with the amendments of removing the public defender from receiving the 1% increase and removing the supervisor of assessments from receiving the 1% increase. Am I correct, Madam State's Attorney? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion as amended?
Just
Mr. Newhouse.
clarification. Since we are not dealing with the final department head of the health department, do we need to have a motion to remove that, or do we have any, since it was up there on that page, are we required to take some action, either to remove it by vote, or can we just say we're not going to mess with it?
That's a good question.
Just, Madam State Attorney.
I was just going to say, if you're voting on the document, then I would recommend making a motion to remove that.
But we're not voting on the document.
I thought you just said that that's
No,
what
we're
the
voting
original
on,
motion.
we're voting on the original motion made
Is to
with,
approve this
no, the original motion is to approve
No, it does say that.
document dated, well,
11.4, which is the new 11.15, does say,
that's, see, that's
motion
not,
to
this is a
approve
November
document.
14th. Ken, which, Mr. Ternoni, which November 15th
That's
document are we?
the document is a spreadsheet with all the individuals that would receive the 1%.
And we do not have that spreadsheet in front of us, correct?
Well, I think you do. I think we hard copied everyone.
Is it hard copy? All right, let me see.
I just thought I might be mistaken, but I thought when Ms.
Is that
Geesky-
this document, Mr. Ternoni?
Yes.
Okay. This document was on your desk. This is the document that we're clarifying. So it is not this document, which was on the screen. This was more notes. So what we are approving is to clarify this document dated November 15th with the amendments to that motion. Is that correct, Mr. Cerulli?
I'm sorry, I just then misunderstood. I thought Ms. Geesky had changed the date to the 14th when she did the motion. But
Mr.
I
Cerulli?
changed it to the 14th because we were going to get very confused about which document she was actually referring to.
all right, if we're not actually voting on the document that's dated the 14th, and then we're not removing anything. Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, that was simple. All right, so we have the original motion as amended. It has 2 amendments. Is everyone clear on exactly what we're voting for or against?
Would you please read the motion again?
I would gladly do so. The motion is to approve this document dated November 15th, 2017, clarifying which non-union positions are subject to a 1% increase effective December 1st, 2016, and is amended to include the county clerk's office. I'm sorry, is amended to remove, it's amended to remove the public defender's position from receiving the 1% increase, and is amended to remove the supervisor of assessments position from receiving the 1% increase.
Thank you.
Okay? Any questions? Roll call, please.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
No.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Geesky,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Motion carries. Ms. Geesky, anything else simple for us?
Do I have to? All right, let's give this one a try. Let's see, we're at 11.2, a motion to approve ordinance 17-23, the annual budget appropriation and levy ordinance for fiscal year 2018, which includes November 9th version of GIS fund budget, a November 9th version of the public defender budget, a November 13th version of the county clerk's budget, a November 14th version of the supervisor of assessments budget, a November 14th version of the Board of Review budget, and a November 14th version of the contingencies budget.
I have a motion by Ms. Gieske. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Malley. Discussion. Mr. Ternoni, you have something you want to
Just clarify that the action taken tonight to remove the public defender from the 1%, if the budget should reflect the action tonight. So just to clarify that the 1% would be removed, just so that's clarified.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ward.
The other one I would like to have some clarification on. I believe that the Board of Health fund budgets that are in our budget book are not the same as the one that they have approved this week, which includes a 5% increase for their administrator. So where does this budget, do we have to amend the budget to include this new version of their draft budget? Unless it's going to be the same one that was in the book, which I don't think they want to do.
I can see Mr. Ternoni's not raising his hand saying, I want to answer that question. Mr. Ternoni, any clarification, or State's Attorney?
I guess just on one point, and Mr. Ternoni can speak on the other, but per statute, the Board of Health sets the compensation of the Department of Health director.
Correct.
So the county board does not have control over that.
Right.
So if you would want to amend the budget tonight to reflect the 5%, you may. If you want to do other amendments to the budget, you may. If you wanted to decrease a budget, you may. You can make any amendments you would like to the budget that was put on layover. If that helps.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Ternoni, would you like to add?
I'd like to, I don't know if this will add, subtract, or muddy, but just so it's clear that the budget book that's in front of you would be the October 17th version of what the department gave me for the budget book. So it is not the same as what the Board of Health voted on yesterday.
Right.
It is not the same as what the Board of Health voted on October 30th. So the version that is in your budget book tonight is the version that I was given on October 17th. So just so that's clear, if you vote in the budget tonight, you're voting in their October 17th.
First one, right.
The first one,
Amend
that's
it
correct.
to make that
Right.
change.
Mr. Newhouse.
Just for clarification's sake, in our meetings, since budgets have been handed in by all departments, are there multiple departments who have handed in amended budgets, or is the health department the only department that has handed in an amended budget?
Mr. Ternoni.
They're the only department that's provided an amended budget.
Okay.
Any other? Ms. Gieske.
I just want to, can I just clarify something to make sure I've got this straight? On October 17th, we had an administrator's salary. On October 30th, we had an 8% increase submitted by the Board of Health to the administrator's salary. And then on yesterday, we got a new one that is a 5% increase. Am I getting that right?
I believe that is correct.
Wait.
Ms. Ward?
I believe that it was up to 8%, but they decided to settle on 5.
Kathy, I'm looking at facts. I'm looking
Right.
at the document. I'm not saying what I think they did. I'm
Okay.
looking at documents.
Yeah, they could have gone up that high. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I got that right. I would like to amend the budget to reduce the mistake that was made by the health department, and the county board decided to forego or put to pay the employer FICA. I'd like to reduce that or restrict that by, or reduce it by $5,000 to cover that additional raise, in light of the fact that this raise is 3 times greater than any other director in the county is receiving, or head of department is receiving.
I will second it.
Is that a motion, Ms. Gieske?
Yes, it is a motion.
I'll second
A
it.
motion by Ms. Gieske, seconded by Ms. Ward. Discussion from the board? Mr. Ellingson?
I guess I'm just thinking, didn't we already have a motion on the floor?
For the whole.
It was. I'm assuming, Ms. Gieske, you mean an amendment. You would like to. You said amend.
I think I said
You said
amendment.
amend. Yeah, it's an
Oh, you did
amendment
say
to the
amendment.
budget.
I said
Correct.
I was
Yep.
hearing it there. Okay.
Yep. Yep. It's an amendment. Mr. Newhouse, did you have something?
Just for a matter, again, of practicality, if this were to pass, and if that money was removed from the portion of the budget, would that affect the levy, and would that money also have to be designated to go somewhere else?
That money does not affect the levy. This is monies that the Board of Health came to the county and needed some assistance due to some issues they had in preparing their budget. The county found a way to do that by foregoing having them pay a full amount or an entire amount on FICA tax, and the county would cover that for 1 year and 1 year only. So that's where money is coming from. If I understand Ms. Gieske's motion correctly, she would like to reduce the amount that the county will cover on that FICA tax by $5,000. I think you said six.
Yes, I did.
$5,000. So we would still be helping to a point, but not the full amount. So it would be up to the Board of Health to find that additional funding in their budget. Is that clear as mud?
It's clear.
Okay. Mr. Newhouse?
Sherry, in your motion, can I assume that the amount of assistance was a flat 5,000, or is that 5,000 a dollar amount determined by the perceived increase of the administrative salary, which I believe was closer to around 4,300 or 4,400?
You're right. It was $43,7460, and the amount that of the employer FICA was $14,000 and some change. Is that? I'm sorry, I don't have the exact figure, but it was 14,000 something. So it would reduce it essentially down to that we would cover the 10 grand.
Okay.
And I just rounded it up, to be very honest with you.
That's fine.
Mr. O'Malley?
Can this be construed that you're trying to manipulate their budget when you don't have the right to? How's that going to stand up if this is brought to court?
Well, I think on this issue, the county is amending what they were willing to assist on FICA versus reducing the levy or something of that nature. It was in the budget that the county was going to help contribute this, so I don't know if it could necessarily, I think that would be a legitimate reason.
What I listened to this evening, it sounds like you're trying to connect the two, because they're equal amount. I'm just asking a question.
Right, and I'm not saying that, but I think that the board can amend any part of the budget that they want to at this point. And so it would be a valid amendment to vote on, if the board so decides to support that.
Mr. Newhouse?
Is it, this is a point of order for the state's attorney, is it permissible or legal to amend an amendment?
I think you have to vote on, certainly will make it clearer if you can just, if you vote on the amendment first, and then if you want to start over with another amendment.
Maybe this will help, Mr. Newhouse. What are you trying to amend the amendment to amend?
Can I give an explanation of the direction I'm going if this amendment fails? Without
Certainly.
making another amendment?
Sure.
The
Give us your thought pattern.
The reason why I was offering the previous amendments was complete consistency. And I would like to strive for consistency in this also. And so if this amendment passes, we're going to be reducing at 5,000. If this amendment fails, I would be willing to offer a second amendment that would reflect a 2% increase to that department head rather than the 5% increase. So I'm going to say I would, without doing the math right now, I would say probably something in the $2,000 to $2,500 range reduction rather than 5,000.
Okay. So you can amend an amendment.
It's going to get confusing.
Mr. Carlisle, did you have something?
Yeah, and a quick question. So if there was a second amendment to do what Mr.
There is a second amendment. Oh, wait, that's something different.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
And if nobody agrees to it and there's dead silence, it will not be.
Correct. If there was an amendment to the amendment made and there was no second, then it would die to no, because there was no second. Or we can vote on the original amendment and see if it passes, and then you can always offer another amendment, however Mr. Newhouse would choose to proceed. I would, at this time, I see Mr. Cox, who's the head of the Board of Health, is here in the audience. I asked him to attend if he was able to, and he did attend, so I would like to, if he'd like to at least give him a couple of moments to address us if he so desires, or if he doesn't, that's okay too. Mr. Cox, anything that you'd like to say, or?
I'm confused on which amendment you're talking.
Sometimes we are too. No, as
I understand the
Mhm.
first one is going to be decrease the amount, the additional $14,000
Correct. That's the only amendment that's on the floor right now to our budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. Okay. Mr. Newhouse.
Well, to cut the drama, I'll get it over with in a hurry. You did, Madam State's Attorney, say I could amend amendment.
Yes, you may.
Sherry, did you say the exact dollar amount for the increase was how much for the 5% increase for the administrator salary? Was it 43 what?
It is 4,000, hang on a minute, hang on. $4,374.60. That was the salary yesterday.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the amendment to Sherry Giesche's motion to amend. Oh, boy, that bungled it up. I would move to amend her reduction of $5,000 to a reduction of $1,750.
There's a motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Branson. Is the motion to reduce the 5,000 by 1,750 or to make it 1,750?
If the total amount that was quote-unquote distributed in this FICA issue was 15,000, and if Ms. Giesche's motion was to amend that amount down to 10,000, I am wanting to amend that amount to only reducing the 15,000 by $1,750.
Okay, that's what I understood. Mr. Newhouse, if I could ask you a question, were you trying to make that 5% increase a 3% increase, a 2% increase,
My attempt is to make that 5% increase a 2% increase, in which I think I could be safely saying I have done my best to treat department heads equally.
I'll second.
I don't want to, it's already been seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't want
Fine.
to throw water on your parade a little bit, but I think you've only reduced it by 2% rather than 3%.
No.
I think your numbers might be a little off, but I could be wrong.
The total amount of her salary proposed increased is $4,376, 74, something like that. And if that's 5%, if you divide that by 5 and then multiply it by 2, you'll come up with a $1,750 average.
I will take your word for it. Okay? Discussion from the board. Ms. Ward.
Just to make clear with the state's attorney, so if we say yes to this, do we have the power to say she can only get 2%? We don't?
We do not have the power to say what her
So-
salary
It'll be the
is.
health board's ability to do what they choose.
Right,
Still.
so
Correct.
the health board, her salary has been set by them in their budget.
Yes.
So her salary would not change because it's been set by them. What you're changing is the amount of money that you are going to allow in your budget to help them with a line item in their budget. Would that be fair to say, Mr. Terranoni, with the FICA?
Yes.
Gets the same thing, I think.
Yes.
It's their choice how they use their dollars.
Correct. Okay? So, point of order question for the state's attorney. If the amendment to the amendment passes, then does the original amendment go away?
No.
Well, if you vote yes, then I think it's amended to that, and then you still have to amend. Basically, at this point, we're amending to the 1750.
Okay,
And
so,
then I think then we amend or vote on that.
okay, so if we, I just want to make sure I get it clear in my head. So if we vote yes to amend the 5,000 to 1750, then we have to vote whether to amend the budget by 1750.
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, we're just voting
Ms.
to
Gieske?
change the
You're,
amendment.
you're going to owe everybody cake after this.
Hey, I didn't, never mind. I'm
It's-
just the
hey,
messenger,
it's
kid.
your
Just the
committee. It's your committee. That's all
messenger,
I'm
just the
saying.
messenger. I
All right,
guess
is
I
there-
would ask we go back and clarify that again, because I'm not sure everyone, so rather than.
So here's what we have. We
14,000
have the original motion on the budget.
Right.
The budget has been originally amended, to reduce one of the items in the budget to reduce a payout by $5,000 to the health department. I don't even want to say it's a payout, but it's a line item, to reduce a line item by $5,000. That amendment was amended to make it, instead of $5,000, $1,750. Okay? Clear as mud? So, is there any other discussion on the amendment of $1,750?
Over here.
Mr. Ellingson.
I hate to even start, but I do think I'll vote against the amendment because I think in a lot of ways it looks like we're trying to arbitrarily set a increase, and I don't think that's our job. But I think the first motion of reduction by $5,000 for the reasons that we're seeing some other monies being offset from what originally had happened makes it probably a cleaner motion, and a motion that does not try and show that we're dictating a wage.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Oops, I'm sorry. Mr. Newhouse.
I would counter that, Denny, and that this looks like a severe penalty, where I don't think that's what we need to do.
Which is the 5,000.
The 5,000.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Brad Stark,
No.
Kathy Ward,
No.
Carl Johnson,
No.
Sherry Branson, Jeff Carlisle,
No.
Denny Ellingson,
No.
Sherry Gieske,
No.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
Nay.
Jessica Muehlner,
No.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
No.
Motion fails. The amended amendment fails. Now for the amendment, which would be to reduce that line item by $5,000. Any further discussion on the amendment to the motion of the budget? Ms. Gieske.
I want to go back and clarify. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the employer FICA contribution, correct?
Mr. Ternoni.
Yes. What happened is, in an attempt to help the department balance their budget, I had offered to not invoice them for employers' FICA for the health department fund next year only, and that's worth $14,000. So what I believe your intent is, instead of forgiving $14,000, you're going to forgive $9,000.
Whatever the amount is minus
Yes,
$5,000.
minus $5,000.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm sorry I don't have the exact number. May I? One more
Yes, Ms. Gieske.
One more thing. I think I want to go back to something that I think the state's attorney said. This isn't about this raise. This is about our budget. This is about the county's budget, I believe. And that's why I think reducing this part is a fair approach.
Any further discussion? Mr. O'Malley.
I just respectfully disagree. I think you're all being very vindictive. I spent 4 hours over there today hearing nothing but accolades at all levels from 3 state administrators. I think you have to let the health department realize they had a contract with her that you aren't even privy to. There's a lot of things you don't know, and you're voting on emotion right now, not on performance and not on what was prearranged. And I really think you're all misinformed.
Ms. Gieske.
I guess I will take exception to being called vindictive. I think we have a lot of department heads here that, particularly some of our newer ones and some of others, that have done an exemplary job also. And they are getting a set increase. We just talked about it ad nauseum. And this isn't about the abilities or the contributions here. This is about fairness and equity among our department heads, from my perspective.
Any further discussion? Ms. Ward.
I think Ms. Gieske said it perfectly. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. This would be to a yes vote, would reduce the FICA, whatever we want to call it, line item by $5,000. So a yes vote would vote in favor of it, a no vote would not vote in favor of the amendment. Roll call, please.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
No.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
No.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse, Bernard O'Malley,
No.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we have the motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2018 budget as amended. Is there any further discussion on the 2018 budget?
Mr. Ternoni, could you just clarify, in addition to what's listed that Ms. Gieske read off, you had said something regarding the public defender's position?
Correct.
Does that need to be added to?
What I clarified is tonight the board felt that that position was not eligible for the 1% increase. The budget book that's in front of you wouldn't be consistent with that. So I'm just saying that line item needs to change to reflect what was done tonight.
Okay, so, and that is part of Ms. Gieske's amendment?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that was clear. Okay.
All right. Anything further? Any further discussion on the budget? I'll just say a couple quick things. I'd like to thank Ms. Gieske and her entire finance committee for all the hard work they've done over the last few months on the budget. I think Ms. Gieske got a good taste of what a pain it can be, but it can also be very satisfying working with our department heads, our other elected officials, and all of you too. To put together a budget, it's not an easy process, and it can really be frustrating many times, but I think she steered the ship correctly. She worked hard on it. I want to thank all of our department heads and elected officials for doing a great job in working with her and doing everything to keep the finances as tight as we can. It's been tough times. I've said this many, many times since I first got to take over, or had to take over, I should say, the finance chair years ago. None of these budgets have been easy, and it just gets tougher and tougher because we really run a tight ship in Boone County. We're streamlined. Everybody works their butt off, and I'll be the first to tell you that when we're talking pay raises, nobody gets a pay raise here that they really deserve. They deserve way much more, a lot more than what they get. All our workers, our department heads, our elected officials, they deserve a lot more because I truly believe in Boone County we have the best individuals working. I really believe that. So thank you, Ms. Gieske, for all your hard work, for you and your team.
And ditto thanks to all the department heads and our staff here, my colleagues on the committee.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
No.
Motion carries. Ms. Gieske, you got anything easy for us today?
The fun just rolls on. Item 11.3 is a motion to approve Resolution 17-33, placing on the March 20th, 2018 ballot a referendum to increase the current 1/2 cent public sales tax to 1 cent. This was approved in committee 4-0.
Motion by Ms. Gieske. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Malley. Discussion. I think we've talked about this at length many, many times, and I think we all truly understand what needs to be done and what we have to do. So I hope everyone will support it. It's nice when we can have a unanimous board vote in favor of something like this. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and I hope we can do it because our public safety really, really needs this increase. So anything else? Roll call, please.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. Ms. Gieske,
Finally, that's it.
are you sure you don't want to just chat for a while?
No, please. I think you've all had enough of me.
Nothing in your bag of tricks you want to pull out just for the heck of it?
Nope, empty.
All right. We have been going hard at it here for a little while. Let's take a 5-minute recess, give people a chance to stretch a moment, and then I'd encourage you to talk to Mr. Olson about the Dark Horse Lodge if you have any questions. Thank you.
Joe Briscato.
What do I make?
Talk to Charlie Lisco, and she says, you know, I mean, everybody likes him. He's like a super nice guy. Apparently, I've met everybody likes him. I can't imagine them not.
Okay, I just didn't know how, it was relatively new to that. She just announced that.
money, she wasn't going to retire. So it was just because
He doesn't need a petition, though, does he? How many signatures does he need? Well, yeah, right, like in 2 weeks.
He talked to me about it, and just said he was wanting to
Right, I joked, like, I actually cracked a joke with John Gendy about it. He was like, why are you asking about the motorcycle? I said, no, because Trisha asked me if anybody, we were helping him because he's running. He's like, he's a really nice guy. I said, apparently Trisha thinks so, but she's not allowed to say so because she's a Republican. Yeah, and Winnebago County is such a volatile place right now. You know, you hate to think of somebody like really anxious, crazy person.
Right.
It was a little confusing. Believed to be a kind person. I appreciate that kindness, you know, as a qualification because, I don't know, I hear horror stories about, you know, judges who are asked to girl. Yeah, I don't just kind of feel like I got my nose to the wheel all the time, you know. I don't do much of anything. Work and, I watch Harper still good night. And I've been fixing up that motorcycle. Yeah, I didn't end up getting the GS, the 1100 piece, but oh, I left my phone at home. I was showing you a picture, but I don't have it.
You saw these now. These are not just, there's a lot of people that
yeah, well, it runs. It's just the one that I ended up with. Maybe I've got a picture of it in my email. The one that I have runs. It just
he's running a department.
it's just been. It was my dad, so it's really emotional. You know, because my dad, like, he's done everything. He just hasn't been riding it. He's like, you know, you should just take mine. I don't ride it anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. He bought that motorcycle when I was 5. Yeah, but right, like he's had this thing. He rode it to Alaska. He rode it all over. You know, it's been. He rode it through Mexico. He rode it to Alaska. He rode it to Canada. My dad. Yeah, and you know, he used to put all 3 of us on it and drive us to school. I remember the principal at the elementary school yelling at him, said he couldn't put all 3 of us on the back of the bike. He was so like, you know, yeah, like crazy day. Don't ever tell Ty that somebody did that. I don't know if he's the type of person to be like, yeah. Yeah, I do. That's cool. Let's see if I can find it. It's motorcycles here. Sure. There, here we go. Bike sitting at Homerstead, Alaska, right on the edge of all over the world here, this thing. There with his saxophone on the back, all dirty in Mexico. I don't know. Yeah, it's a 1974 BMW 900. Sitting in my bedroom. In pieces. Because I want to sand the whole frame and repaint it. And, you know, yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could. I literally, the derby posts go by and I start getting emotional. Yeah, and they start rolling up. There's all the cool things they're doing, and I see pictures of everybody at that.
It just lists out the agenda.
Well, that, and then at the Park District building, like that looks really great too. I don't know.
It's one of the first times that I've seen this board stand up to the health board. And I have to decide what I remember to tribute. I guess.
What?
Don't see moss flying.
looked it up online. You know that? I did. I looked at it.
I didn't know.
But I'm not disappointed. Let's see, what is today's date?
Today's date.
How many signatures do you need, Steph?
Not sure. I've got a couple of sheets. I think I got. Do I need 39?
Have you heard if anybody else is running against us?
Possibly that will.
No, Randall? Who said that? I don't think so. I think she's getting there. You need some chocolate.
My apologies for muddying everything, and I'm sure you'll be borrowing your glasses as I really slow performance of it.
Well, they want some big fan blades now to
All right.
pull that stuff around.
That's why when I point this out, she's already
Yeah, that was ridiculous. What?
See any other signatures on there when you pulled yours? Or did you pull all? It's gone on there. So far,
And 5%, as I said,
that's you.
a whole lot lower than 5%. Yeah, twice the money. But, yeah, well, I think they need it. Especially since we're being you see those levy payments from the sheriff's It seems like somebody comes in somebody doesn't come
And this
Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. Our best ever. I know. You should have told me. I would have got you in. We have people that buy tables, and then they give us the tickets. So if that's ever the case, please let me know. We had a record number of tables, a record number of people, a record number of money that we made. So please just tell me that. We're happy to have you just come.
Found out that they lost
Okay.
the big
How's your dad doing now? He's been.
earlier this year, and that's why it probably isn't.
Oh, I bet that was wonderful.
Yeah,
Yep, get out.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Sure.
Their biggest account. Place opened up.
A few changes. A few changes, exactly.
So, their biggest customer was they sold to
No, they don't buy it. Somebody paid. They get paid to take.
That's tough. That's tough.
That's how they make the money. They get the paid to take. I think it's usually like 26 bucks.
He's making a little by little. Good.
Oh my gosh.
Like 26 bucks a year.
My parents, my dad looks at me and I'm like,
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well, good, thanks. But just let me know anytime.
Summer, had some older issues. Only at paint. Well, I was just telling him, no, their biggest account. They don't bring their stuff.
Mr. O'Malley. I gotta sign
Bernie. Bernard. Paging Dr. O'Malley.
No, he's ignoring it.
I'm retired. I'm telling this guy about my Checking on the septic tank?
Mr. Chairman. Are we ready? Mr. Stark, roads.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 12-1, motion to approve right-of-way of vacation at Poplar Grove Road and right-of-way of acquisition at Lawrenceville Road and Poplar Grove Road, pending state's attorney review.
Motion by Mr. Stark. Is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Branson. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark.
12-2, motion to approve ordinance 17-25, reducing the speed limit along Squaw Prairie Road between Poplar Grove Road and Grange Hall Road from an unposted 55 to a posted 45.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Ward. Any discussion? Ms. Gieske, she hasn't talked enough tonight.
Yeah.
No, I'm
yes.
just kidding.
You're going to have duct tape over my mouth in a second. I looked at the study and my eyeballs started twirling. Can I ask why we're doing this? I guess the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to think. I think it was Spring Creek Road I took from 76 all the way into Rockford, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why it was 45 miles an hour. But anyhow, so I digress. I'm just curious why. I'm not arguing. I just want to know.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Stark?
Citizens in the area had asked for a speed study on that stretch of road. Mr. Crone had conducted a speed study, I believe, August, September timeframe. His study came back with a suggested 55 mile an hour, and that was presented to the township. The township went ahead and they would like a 45 due to the close proximity of the houses through that stretch of road, especially on the north side, and that's the number they came to, and that's the number they would like.
And this is, you're talking Squaw Prairie, you're not talking about Spring Creek that I was...
No, this is just
Right.
Squaw Prairie
Okay.
between Grange Hall to Poplar Grove,
Got
so
it.
it'd be east
Got
of
it.
Poplar Grove Road.
Mr. Ellingson?
As you mentioned, Sherry, I was quite confused by it, but I was confused because it is a township matter. It's not a county matter, it's a township road, and I really didn't feel we should be voting on it. But because of procedural things that happen, it is recommended that the county board give a blessing to the township when they do it. So as I see it, we're just doing it to approve what the township is recommending and requesting, and, you know.
Thank you.
Mr. Newhouse?
Anytime I look at one of these, I recognize on one hand that we've got to move people through the county, and you want to do that in a timely fashion. Is it in here? Am I missing it? Are there accident studies that would suggest that this is inappropriate at 55, or when Mr. Crone came up with a recommendation of 55 with a speed study, why is it being bypassed?
Mr. Crone's recommendation was for 50.
50.
For 50 down from an unposted 55, and the township would like to see a 45. Just their opinion, that's what they want.
Ms. Ward?
There's been numerous people in that area who have asked us for an additional stop sign, you may recall that, and a slower speed limit. I don't think we had any petitions signed on this one, but we've had numerous people ask us to lower their speeds or even put another stop sign there. So I think that's what the township is responding to as well.
Mr. Newhouse?
Does the county, by a yes or a no vote, dictate whether the township can do this, or is this simply a, I think the word used a few minutes ago was a blessing on their decision?
Mr. Crone, can you answer that? While we all look at it and go,
In order for the sheriff to enforce a posted speed limit below 55, it needs to go through our county ordinance.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Mr. Newhouse?
To go from 50 to 55, was it just the sheer number of people that were ignoring the speed limit, or was it the distance between so many driveways was dictating something slower, or why 50, and what can you tell me?
Sure. There's a technical review that is done based on the number of access points within a certain distance. You look at major intersections, access points, farm and residential access points off the road, and then you also do a statistical study of existing traffic volumes and rates, and you look at that, and both of those factors are put into an equation, and it spits out a recommended speed limit of 50 miles per hour. So like was mentioned earlier, I did do that speed study. I also did the analysis of the access points and put it all in, and the result was 50 miles per hour.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Stark.
Mr. Chairman, 12.3, motion to approve a new contract with G&K for employee uniforms, cost not to exceed $2,058 a year.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Mr. Ellingson. Discussion. Mr. Stark.
I'd just like to note that Mr. Crone did some shrewd negotiating, and we're saving, I think, a little more than $700 a year on this contract over our previous one. And good work to him, and hopefully he's as shrewd and tight with all of our other money as it goes forward.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Danny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yep.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark.
12.4, motion to approve the revised Boone County Highway Department overweight and oversized fee schedule, dated November 7th of 2017.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Stark.
12.5, motion to approve services agreement with Oxcart Permit Systems LLC for overweight permit data and corresponding website management pending state's attorney review.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Mr. Ellingson. Discussion. Mr. Stark, will there be a fee with this agreement?
Mr. Crone, he's been working with the Oxcart people. He'd be more qualified to answer any questions about it.
Mr. Crone? You knew you should have sat closer.
So our current fee structure is a mileage-based structure. This one would go to a per-trip structure that a lot of the other counties have. Our current fee structure, last year we had about $6,500 worth of revenue generated from that. Under this new system, we'd have about $9,500, given the same overweight vehicles. Under that $9,500, on top of that, that is paid by the user, by the truck hauler, there would be a fee of about $1,500, which, essentially that, on average, that would be about a $10 fee per vehicle or per haul. And it's consistent. I talked to a lot of the users right now, and they all are supportive of the system. Their major concern is more of response time and efficiency rather than dollars. When you're talking about moving, 200,000-pound loads, you're not concerned about a $20 or $10 fee. They just wanted to have a good, quick response and be assured that they can get the appropriate permit to transport that load.
So there would be about $1,000, $1,500 that the county would pay to Oxcart permit system?
Nope. That would be in addition to our fee structure. So there's a user fee on top of it that is separate. So the fee structure that you're approving, that you have in front of you tonight, goes through what we would generate, and then on top of that, within the contract from Oxcart, there's a separate fee structure based on the dollar fee. It's an incremental. Generally speaking, it's like 15% plus a 3% credit card fee. So you're talking maybe like 18% roughly.
But is that, not to interrupt you, but It sounds like that's almost the motion we just approved, the fee structure, but this is the approve the services agreement with Oxcart?
Yes.
Or is that-
Within the services agreement, there's a fee structure for Oxcart services.
Okay, so the county will not have to pay them anything. It'll all be
That's
user
correct.
paid.
It's all user-based, yes. The fee structure
Okay.
that you had in front of you, that you already discussed, that is a fee structure that recoups the deterioration of vehicles on our roads, and that still goes into our pocket, always has, always will. The Oxcart system generates a separate fee that is above and beyond our fee structure, and all the other, like I said, all the haulers, or I talked to 3 of our primary haulers that have applied for permits, and they were all for it. They had no negative comments about Oxcart, and it seems like McHenry County is using that system. A lot of the adjacent municipalities, and I would like to, there seems to be a lot of positive reactions, I guess, both from the public agency side and the user side. So, but yeah, to answer your question, that fee will not reduce our income at all.
Okay. Mr. Stark?
I just want to say, from the time Mr. Crone came on, this was an issue I had at heart and talked about him quite quickly after he came on with us. This is moving our permitting system from the 1950s into the 21st century. Everything was pen and paper, wait for someone to get back to sign it, wait for them to fax you. Who even has a fax machine anymore? This is all web-based, app on your phone, real-time efficiency. And we've been seeing so much of this come out of the highway department. We've been moving leaps and bounds, and I'm so happy with the direction we've been going at this department.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Oh, wait a minute. Oh.
Aye.
Where's- Oh, it's agreement. All right. Okay. Somebody over here wanted something?
Mr. Crone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was
Mr.
just
Crone.
going to throw out some general numbers. You know, we get about 150 to 200 permits annually. You know, with a reduced staff and part-time assistant in the office, it's hard to respond to these haulers quickly. So this is a real vital system for us to have based on our staffing capabilities and their needs. So we get 150 to 200 permits annually. Each permit on average is probably anywhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $75, and then they would expect to have a $10 to $15 Oxcart fee on top of that we wouldn't even see. It's part of our agreement, the Oxcart service agreement, that will be a fixed service fee that they charge, and we just receive that monthly check back from them for our overweight vehicle fees.
Super. Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Gieske?
And where will those funds go to?
Mr. Crow?
They go back into our general fund as they have in the past. The general highway fund. Yeah. So yes, yep. Not true. Not.
Hold up,
Yeah. I saw Ken's eyes get bigger, so I wanted to clarify.
Please, yes.
We were just getting ready to amend the budget again. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark?
12.6, motion to approve resolution 17-34, county engineer's salary modification for fiscal year 2017.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Ward. Discussion. Ken, you want to clarify why we're doing this?
Sure. Whenever you modify the compensation of an engineer, the state requires a resolution, and this is for the 1% for the current year.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark?
12.7, motion to approve resolution 17-32, county engineer's salary for fiscal year 2018.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Stark, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ray Larson,
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Stark, anything else?
That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Health and Human Services, Mr. Carlisle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is rolling real well. I see 13.1, motion to approve ordinance 17-24, increasing certain health fees for the Department of Services, approved in committee 4-1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Carlisle, seconded by Ms. Gieske. Discussion. Ms. Miller.
I just have a question, since I did not attend this committee meeting, that a lot of the fees are going up, and that's understandable. But except for like non-compliance checks, those fees are going down. That was the part. It seemed like non-compliance would be one where you would. I just wanted someone to explain the logic.
You know, I think we might have somebody in the room that could really nail these down. Maybe she'd come help us out. Amanda, would you care to come just touch base and explain that?
Sorry.
Okay, so we did a review of several of the health department fees and wanted to make sure that our cost study analysis matched up with our throughput in terms of the cost to the department, what's our break-even point, making sure that we are breaking even. And the non-compliance fees in the past historically have not been charged by the health department, and we want to start with fees that are very reasonable. And then over the next year, we will take a look at how much time it actually takes to go out and do a recheck for non-compliance, and from there determine if it's covering our costs or not. We wanted to go with a conservative, appropriate approach to the first, second, and third recheck.
Ms. Miller?
So these were the non-compliance check fees that were on the books, but they were never charged. So that's why you're starting with a low number, because you don't know. Is that what is that what I heard?
Yes and no. There was some confusion in previously as to whether or not they were being charged, how much was being charged, and how that was being enforced. And so wanted to take a more streamlined and conservative approach to that.
Ms. Gieske?
But Amanda, you will collect these now. So you're actually going from 0 to 50, or whatever the fee. Is that correct? If they were never collected before, it was 0.
Well, depending on who you asked, they were or they weren't collected.
So in other words, you're clarifying it.
So I'm going to start from ground zero, and we're going to go with what we think would be the cost of just going out and doing a brief check on one item that we found at a fixed establishment restaurant, which shouldn't take too much departmental time, hence the conservative fee amounts.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? I'd just like to say that Mr. Carlisle and I had the opportunity to sit down with Amanda and go through all of this, and she walked us through their whole entire reasoning as to simplifying this entire process. And I think we've all gotten to know that she's pretty darn thorough in everything she does, and she has a reason for doing it. And this just makes sense to streamline us. And much like Mr. Stark said, the highway department is getting pushed, pulled, and dragged into the 21st century. I think the health department is also. So this is just one more step in her process in making things more efficient and doing the best she can for our community as a whole. So I hope you'll support it. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Jessica Muehlner,
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse,
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley,
Yes.
Brad Stark,
Yes.
Kathy Ward,
Yes.
Carl Johnson,
Yes.
Sherry Branson,
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle,
Yes.
Denny Ellingson,
Yes.
Sherry Gieske,
Yes.
Carl Larson,
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Carlisle, anything else you'd like to
No, thank you.
share
I'm
with us?
complete.
Admin.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the renewal of the general liability, property, casualty, and workers' compensation insurance with Counties of Illinois Risk Management Agency. The premium will be $616,674.
Motion by Mr. Newhouse. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Milner. Discussion. Ms. Ward.
I know that we went through extensive research to find out and make sure we were doing the proper insurance. Are we, and it was to save money, are we in fact saving money? Is there any numbers that you can show us that this was a really good decision for our people?
Mr. Ternoni, do you want to tackle that?
Well, this is a liability insurance pool that you're a member of with 22 other counties.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no increase next year.
Okay.
So to me, a zero increase is about as good as it gets.
As good as it gets, right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Newhouse, were you going to have something? Did I see your hand start to raise?
Well, my comment would be that I am appalled anytime I need to spend $1 for insurance, but I suppose I'd be more appalled if I got on the wrong side of a situation and didn't have it. So I think it's a necessary evil. The cost, Ken called it zero. I would call it 0.1% increase from last year. So it is an exceptionally minute amount of extra dollars that we're going to be paying.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yes.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Giesecke.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Mueller.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, admin has no further motions.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Ms. Ward, I see we removed your item. Is there anything you'd like to?
No further comments.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Public safety, Mr. Larson, anything you'd like to just give us a heads up on?
No motions from public safety.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Larson. Community, excuse me, community building.
Yes, our board meets tomorrow, so I don't have any report other than to say that the cooperation we received for Jules to Jeans was exemplary. They do a wonderful job for us.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. UCCI, Mr. Ternoni.
And, I'm sorry. Oh, please, no, go ahead.
No, if you have more, Ms. Ward?
No, that's
okay.
fine.
Okay.
That's right.
Call your attention to legislation that would freeze property taxes, and it really didn't go anywhere in the veto session, so it would be January before they take this up again.
Thank you, Mr. Ternoni.
What are the chances of that?
Community Action Agency, Ms. Ward.
We meet next week as well.
Okay. 911, Mr. Newhouse.
Let's see. The only thing of any note I thought worth bringing forward was that the carrier for information for the Ninja system goes through the iFiber, and Frontier seems to be throwing a bit of a fit because they want to be more involved, and so they have a small court proceedings, but shouldn't be a large issue, and hopefully it will be resolved shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. Any other committees anybody wants to talk about? Scheduling of committees. Ms. Giesecke.
The next Finance Committee meeting is December 12th at 6 p.m. right here.
Would you like to have 3 or 4 more meetings just to hang out for old time's sake?
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Mr. Larson.
The next Public Safety Committee meeting will be December 11th at 6 p.m. this room.
Thank you. Mr. Ellingson.
The next PCB meeting will be the 6th of December in this room at 6 o'clock. And I don't know if there's a ZBA meeting next week, is there? Oh, there is not one this month? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Newhouse, admin.
Admin, Monday, December 4th, 6 p.m. this room.
Ms. Ward.
City County, Wednesday the 13th at 6 p.m. in this room.
Mr. Carlisle.
Health, Human Services, December 7th, 6 p.m., this building. Be there.
Mr. Stark.
Roads and Capital Improvement, December 5th, Tuesday night, 6 p.m., this room.
Thank you very much. Ken, any unfinished business? Does anyone have any unfinished business? Any new business? Mr. Newhouse? You realize you've used up all your hand raising for the next 2 months.
I do apologize, but there was, and this is directed at Mr. Crone, there was a county that experienced huge rains earlier this year, late planting, late harvesting, and they lobbied heavily for road post or exceeding the limits. And it's my understanding Boone County got swept up, and we have also expanded limits now. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, if we got expanded limits on weights, what all down the road, how big of an issue?
Mr. Crone?
Well, back in August, the state legislation passed a bill that allows for emergency harvest, which the state of Iowa has. And after that was passed, I was at a seminar discussing that, and there was a gentleman from the state of Iowa that stated that it was passed in the state of Iowa about 10 to 15 years ago, and he said ever since that was passed that they've had a emergency harvest season. So the intent of it, I think, is to allow for agricultural vehicles to exceed the limit by 10%. So an 80,000 pound vehicle can carry 88,000 pounds legally during that harvest emergency. So that passed the state of Illinois legislation in August of this year. The governor declared a harvest emergency Sunday, a week ago Sunday, and so anyone within the state of Illinois that would like to, during harvest time, would like to apply for a permit, they can. And I've had one applicant to date that has applied for a permit, and I am, by state statute, I'm required to accept that permit and not charge for it. So, you know, the fees you had tonight, there would be a fee associated with that. However, the state statute overrides that, and we have to allow the vehicles to exceed their capacity by 10%. So to answer your question, I guess, what will the impacts be to our roadway system? There certainly will be, 80,000, generally speaking, vehicles, your standard sedan or small light-duty truck does zero impact to a roadway. Once you get to a semi and 80,000-pound vehicles, over time that will degrade a roadway. What happens is that that vibration and that force that's exerted on the road causes the aggregate, which is your base of your road, to intermingle with the subgrade and the earth that's under it. Once you lose that, you lose your structural capacity of your road. All of that takes place when you're at higher weight vehicles. So I don't think that, during harvest emergency, we're not going to all of a sudden have our roads crumble, but certainly over time, our life expectancy of our typical road should be anywhere from 12 to 17 years. And we might see that decrease a little bit over time. I don't suspect that it would be that significant. In fact, actually, the reason for these overweight permits is to counteract and to account for that loss of use of a roadway. So, if you've got a heavily traveled road with overweight vehicles, those permit fees that we collect is generated to support an increased maintenance schedule on those roads. However, in this case, we don't collect those fees, so the impacts are not financially supported, I guess.
Well,
is that?
That answers it, but we had an opportunity to go to a meet and greet with a state legislator, and his big question was, the governor's pushing for this, what do we do? And I said, well, as a farmer, I would love to have the ability to have bigger loads, but as a county board member who's paying for these roads, or allocating the money, I shouldn't say I'm paying, I'm allocating the money for these by votes, I don't want to go anywhere near it. And the legislator looked at me in the eye and he said, I've never heard that. Everybody wants heavier loads. I said, no, because there's a cost to it sooner or later down the line, and I was very much opposed to this, and I wish the governor would not have done that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have a choice. In my position, I don't have a choice. By state statute, I'm required to issue those permits. There's some counties that the only choice I have is whether I want to issue a blanket permit for all agricultural vehicles to exceed, and I've gotten calls on this, to exceed the 80,000 pounds, to exceed by 10%. I have stated to all the callers and anyone that's inquired about that I'm not issuing a blanket permit. Each one has to because that is a choice that we do have, that each hauler has to apply individually. So I think the biggest concern I think that is valid is that you'd have some of these industrial type farms or haulers that would abuse the system, and by issuing a blanket permit, that's probably more likely the case. But if they have to apply for an individual permit for each one of those, that burden might override the benefit of overweighting their vehicles. So I think that is somewhat protecting us in our case a little bit, is that we are not issuing a blanket permit. We're doing it individually. So some of the smaller farmers where they might have limited trucking and their impacts would be lessened, they are applying for the permits, and I think that's a positive thing.
Mr. Stark.
As someone involved in the transportation industry, I share Mr. Nelson's sentiments on it. I don't see the benefit over it for the course of the long run. And let's face it, the guys that want to abuse the system, they're going to abuse the system. They're not going to take the time to do paperwork that costs nothing. They're just going to do it anyways.
Anything further? All right. Ken, any informational items you really want to point out?
You got your clerk's receipts, Illinois bicentennial celebrations, if you're interested in that. And that's what's noteworthy.
Regarding that bicentennial celebration, we did receive a letter. They're looking for someone to sing the Song of Illinois on a certain day. I thought Mr. Newhouse and Mr. Stark would make a great duet.
I wouldn't want to have to carry him through the whole thing. So.
All right, well, maybe we'll reconsider that one. So, okay. It looks like we do need executive session. Am I correct, Ken? For litigation, personnel, and collective bargaining.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Stark. Is there a second? By Mr. O'Malley. Roll call, please.
Which points are we covering?
All three: litigation, personnel, and collective bargaining. And
there will be motions after.
Yes, and there will be motions after executive session. Roll call, please.
Bernard O'Malley.
Yes.
Brad Stark.
Yes.
Kathy Ward.
Yes.
Carl Johnson.
Yes.
Sherry Branson.
Yes.
Jeff Carlisle.
Yes.
Denny Ellingson.
Yes.
Sherry Gieske.
Yes.
Carl Larson.
Yes.
Ray Larson.
Aye.
Jessica Muehlner.
Yes.
Marshall Newhouse.
Yep.
Motion carries. Let's sneak back here in a couple of minutes.
What do you need to do? You like do a lap?
Time frame.
I just really don't want to be. I'm supposed to pick up my granddaughter. I don't want
her to fall asleep and then have to wake her up and move her. It's better if I get there sooner, rather than let her, be here all night. Let's take another long break so that we can make sure we're here until 10 o'clock. For crying out loud.
At a certain line item amount, each line item, including her salary. So how the board decides to reduce one, in light of this $5,000 reduction.
Yeah, it's killing me.